We lock our doors at night to keep out strangers. Humans are biologically hardwired to fear the anonymous stalker or the unmarked fan. This psychological reflex provides a comforting illusion. It suggests that as long as we stay inside, we are safe. Take 3 distinct tragedies. A young mother found unconscious on a dark highway, a 4-year-old French boy abducted by a phantom nemesis, and a Texas teenager reportedly snatched by an international trafficking ring. Each story begins with an unseen predator striking from the outside, but in every instance, the investigation eventually proved that these external threats were entirely fabricated to obscure a much darker reality. To understand the most shocking anomalies in true crime history, we have to look past the monsters in the shadows. The real evidence is found by turning the magnifying glass onto the victims' own families. These cases reveal that the most profound danger doesn't come from the world at large, but from the people closest to us. In 1990, a bright young mother named Sharon Marshall was found on the side of a highway, apparently the victim of a random hit-and-run. Her death derailed a life of immense potential. She had already earned a full scholarship to Georgia Tech to study aerospace engineering. In the wake of the tragedy, her husband, Frank Floyd, appeared to be the grieving survivor. The facade broke when Floyd attempted to claim an $80,000 life insurance policy on Sharon. Because he frequently used aliases, his social security numbers didn't match his name. To get the payout, he finally provided his real name, which immediately alerted authorities to his history as a federal fugitive. Decades earlier, Floyd had married a woman named Sandy Chipman. While Sandy was serving a 30-day jail sentence, she left her 4 children in Floyd's care. When she was released, she found her house empty. Floyd vanished with all of her children. DNA and background checks later confirmed a horrific reality. Sharon Marshall's true name was Suzanne Savarkis. She was one of the children Floyd had abducted years earlier. Floyd was her former stepfather, and he had raised her, abused her, and eventually married her under a false identity. Shortly before the roadside accident, Sharon had begun making plans to leave Floyd. Following her death, Floyd kidnapped her young son and eventually confessed to murdering the boy while on the run. Suzanne Savarkis spent her entire life trapped in a domestic, invisible prison, hiding in plain sight until a staged accident ended her life. In the early 1980s, the Villemin family was living a successful life in the small French village of Lapange-sur-Vallon. Their peace ended when an anonymous stalker known as the Crow began sending threatening letters and making phone calls promising revenge. In October 1984, the threat turned physical when 4-year-old Grégory Villemin was taken from his yard. Grégory's body was found hours later in the Vallon River, his hands and feet bound. The family received a final letter that same day, stating the murder was an act of vengeance against Grégory's father, Jean-Marie. As investigators analyzed the threatening letters, they noticed the sender used specific terminology, often referring to Jean-Marie as boss. This suggested the killer wasn't a random madman, but someone within the father's professional or familial circle who harbored deep-seated resentment. The suspicion turned inward, causing the family to collapse into violence. Jean-Marie eventually murdered his own cousin, whom he believed was the killer. Later, Grégory's mother was falsely accused and spent years fighting to clear her name. Decades of investigation eventually pointed to a conspiracy of silence within the extended family, fueled by mundane, blue-collar jealousy rather than an outside predator. In 1994, 13-year-old Nicholas Barclay disappeared in San Antonio, Texas. For 3 years, his family maintained that he had been abducted by an international trafficking ring. Then, in 1997, they received a call stating Nicholas had been found alive in Spain. This data comparison highlights why the recovery seemed impossible. Nicholas Barclay was a blonde, blue-eyed teenager. The person who returned from Spain was a dark-haired man with brown eyes and a thick French accent. Yet his sister Carrie identified him as her brother and brought him back to Texas. The FBI eventually proved that the man was actually Frédéric Boudin, a 23-year-old French con artist with a history of stealing identities. Despite the DNA evidence, the Barclay family continued to insist Boudin was Nicholas. This strange acceptance raised immediate red flags. Investigators noted that 3 months after the disappearance, Nicholas's older brother Jason called police to report a break-in, showing no evidence of forced entry. Bourdin himself later claimed that the family fed him information and family photos to help him pass police questioning. These behaviors led investigators to believe the family accepted an obvious imposter to provide an alibi for a domestic crime, likely Nicholas's murder at the hands of his own brother. Before the theory could be investigated, Jason died of a drug overdose. The case remains cold, but the family's willingness to harbor a stranger illustrates the lengths people will go to protect a domestic secret. The insane twists that captivate the public are actually the moments where the external lie finally ruptures. We instinctively search for international trafficking rings or mythical stalkers because acknowledging familial betrayal is psychologically unbearable. The evidence from these cases reveals a sobering statistical reality. The most dangerous predators rarely lurk in the darkness outside. They sit at the dinner table. The The most terrifying twists in human behavior are born behind locked doors, where the people tasked with our protection become the ultimate threat.